Chapter 4. Cram. Once, and it was upon a time, of course, there lived a king who had one daughter and 2 sons. The king did not believe in the education of girls, but for the instruction of the princes he had one professor-in-chief with a staff of 1 who is called a tutor. The professor-in-chief took for his share of the pupils the bright Prince Quickly, who learned everything by reading it over once. The tutor, however, was compelled to teach Prince Slowboy, who was too tired to study and did not want to study and saw no use in studying and could not remember anything anyway. So there. Though very much younger than the professor-in-chief, the tutor was the wiser of the 2. And yet, the wisest man in the world cannot teach a youngster who will not learn. I know, for I have tried it. Because Prince Slowboy would not learn, both the king and the professor-in-chief constantly found fault with the tutor, as if he were to blame. The poor young man was in the palace garden one day, moaning over his sad lot, when he bethought him of something his old nurse had taught him, of which he was to make use only when in great trouble. So the tutor did as his old nurse had told him. He picked a leaf of tansy and a black and yellow pansy, and he found a 4-leaf clover underneath a maple tree, and with these 3 in his right hand he knocked with all his might and main upon the hollow oak where dwelt the busy bee. The busy bee was a fairy who came out immediately upon the application of this charm, and sang,
"I come at the call of the cymbals 3. What does the tutor want with me?"
Now, though the tutor was a very bright young man, he had never before this found any use for poetry, and not a rhyme came into his head. In plain and vigorous prose, therefore he told his woes.
"I am set to teach Prince Slowboy, who is always too tired to study, and does not want to study and sees no good in studying, and cannot remember anything anyway, so there. I work hard, and I think I know as much as the professor-in-chief, but he teaches Prince Quickly, who learns everything by reading it over once. So he gets all the praise, and I get all the blame." The busy bee was very indignant, and sang,
"Fie upon the lazy wight, rub the books upon his head, leaf by leaf from left to right, thus our fairy books are read."
Then she flew back into the hollow oak. The tutor considered this decidedly ridiculous advice, but that very afternoon Prince Slowboy was so provokingly stupid over his geography lesson that really nothing remained untried except the fairy charm. So the tutor solemnly and carefully rubbed the 3 pages of that day's lesson over the prince's head from left to right, the boy meanwhile looking somewhat frightened and astonished, as was natural to be sure. Then the tutor began his questions again, and found to his delight that Prince Slowboy had a perfect lesson. He knew all the capitals and principal cities, and could bound everything and tell its products. Progress was easy and pleasant from that moment. Latin, history, arithmetic, grammar, it was all play to Prince Slowboy now. 4 times the ordinary lessons were learned in a wonderfully short time. Newspapers were read, and a vast amount of general information was picked up from the magazines, all in this expeditious manner. Small wonder that when the king next came to examine his 2 sons, he found Prince Slowboy as much in advance of his brother as he had before been behind him. The chagrin and astonishment of the professor-in-chief can hardly be imagined. He redoubled his efforts, and still the tutor's marvelous pupil grew rapidly wiser than his own. At length he decided to be present, unseen, at one of Prince Slowboy's recitations, that he might gain some insight into the new methods which had been so strangely successful. Thus he learned the fairy charm, and hurried off in great glee to tell the king about it.
"And now, your majesty," said he with a chuckle, "let us bring that young pedagogue to confusion. Allow me to use his charm most vigorously upon Prince Quickly for a few hours, and then call the boys up for examination. When we have exposed the tutor, we may well dismiss him, as I shall then be able myself to care for the 2.
The king did not quite like it, but he agreed to the program of the professor-in-chief, and in a few hours sent for the boys and their teachers, as he often did, to test their progress. It was to be observed that the professor-in-chief was very warm, and appeared fatigued, his arms hanging quite limp, while Prince Quickly's hair was in a shockingly confusing state, and his books sadly crumpled. Both, however, seemed confident and pleased.